Morning, everyone. Welcome back for day 2 of DNA Live. Today, we're going to be looking at accelerating the data and analytics in a new world. I'm April Stackhouse from Corinium, and wonderful to welcome you all back. Before we get started with the content, just wanted to review a few housekeeping notes. If you have any technical issues during the session, we recommend you first try to refresh your browser. And if you continue to still have issues, you can go to the account and the help desk within the event platform. If you haven't taken place in the speed networking, you can definitely sign up for that today. We'll have another session. You'll find that under the All Sessions tab, and it's a great way to meet face-to-face with some of your colleagues and to start some new conversations. Remember, you can always submit questions to our speakers using the chat or Q&A box. We'll do our best to get through as many of them as possible at the end of each session, and those that we don't, we'll talk about in the speaker meet and greets. So submit your questions as you think of them. You don't need to wait till the end, and we'll get through as many of them as we can. With that, I'm really excited to introduce our first session for today. This is a panel discussion on ensuring continued success in the midst of blurring lines and changing roles, and looking at how things have evolved within data and analytics. I would love to introduce our moderator for this, Chris Walker, who's the head of product marketing at Tellius. Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, I'm super happy to be here and to be moderating this panel. I was hoping that our panelists could turn on their videos at this point, and we could go through a quick round of introductions, and then we'll kick off the panel. Maybe since I saw you first, Mario, could you give us an introduction?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Mario Monzo. I'm based out of South Jersey. I've been working with Comcast for 10 years in all types of strategic analytic roles across multiple functions and multiple channels for sales, marketing, operations. I'm actually recently getting back into consulting, trying to do more cutting edge, more cloud computing, AI, more change in the game of analytics. But happy to be here. This is my second Corinium event, and it's just good to see and see new faces and have new conversations.
Thank you. Greg?
And everybody, Greg Bucko, Senior Vice President of Marketing Analytics for AmeriLife Financial here in sunny Florida. Hope everybody's having a great conference and glad to be here.
Thank you. And Beth?
Hi. My name is Beth Puchek. I'm the Chief Data Officer for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, where we adjudicate immigration benefits. And every aspect of our mission is to adjudicate with data. So it's the most critical asset we have. So I'm very excited to talk about my experience in this role.
Fantastic. And then just myself, my name is Chris Walker. I'm the head of product marketing at Tellius. Tellius is an AI-powered BI platform and augmented analytics vendor. and we're helping expedite data to decision making. So with that, I was hoping that we could kick off this panel by, now that everyone has sort of had those introductions, could we maybe jump into our first question? It's a bit of a multi-tier question. So I was hoping we could kind of go around and take whichever part you want to go after. But how have you all seen digital transformation efforts accelerate during COVID? And then that's the first part. How has digital transformation been accelerated? And then how has the makeup of your team changed as a result? And are you seeing any blurring lines? And if you're seeing blurry lines, how have you been approaching that? It's pretty open.
I'll go first, Chris. In my experience at a very large company, we didn't so much have a digital transformation, if you will. At Comcast during COVID, it was more keep the lights on. It was a very operational, just plugging along as we go. There wasn't much of it was kind of a day-to-day exercise. Of course, we tried to, we definitely tried to up our digital first exposure and tried to make the digital experience as seamless as possible. Certainly put emphasis on customer experience, but with all the volatility of COVID, we really didn't have a refined strategy and a plan. It was kind of like learn as we go. Now, I think from that, with what we learned during COVID, now we can actually implement more of a refined strategy around the digital transformation. Like, okay, now where do we go from here that the world has changed? So during COVID wasn't as much as a plan as much as it was a trial and error. But I think from that, we've had learnings to now devise a plan.
That's great. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, so during COVID, I was actually working for Marriott Vacation. I've only been in my role at AmeriLife for the last 2 months, but so I spent most of COVID there with Marriott Vacation. And I would say that what the coronavirus did is expose our own digital strategy and its weaknesses, and it then accelerated at least from a budgetary standpoint, from a prioritization standpoint, and I know I speak for a lot of small to medium-sized companies when I say, it was a matter of survival, making sure that you were online, that you had a good, strong mobile app, that you were able to conduct transactions without the use of phone, because most of our call centers were absolutely overwhelmed with obviously last-minute changes in plans, and so it was an incredibly stressful time in the leisure vertical, and it required many of us to just simply get over whatever hangups we had prior to COVID as it related to making sure that customers were having a great digital and mobile experience. And so, in one way, it really helped to cut through a lot of the red tape that had existed at the time.
For me at USCIS, for those of you that aren't familiar, a lot of our work to adjudicate cases relies on in-person interviews. So there's a lot of interaction with the public. And when COVID happened, that obviously ceased. that was a very hard line in the sand where we stopped public interviews. And that had a ripple effect in many different ways. Obviously, it stopped the work for a period of time. We had to figure out how to pivot into doing video-based interviews. And it also created this public perception that we were closed. So we also didn't get applications. We're a fee-funded agency, unlike a lot of other government agencies. So we rely on receipts to generate revenue to operate the business. So with this perception that we were closed and people not sending in receipts or sending in their applications, we had a decline in revenue. So we really had to step up our digital intake. We're still, a majority of our receipts are intake paper. They're not digital. So we're really trying to swing the pendulum much farther in the digital intake realm. The other area that was interesting with COVID that was not so much in the front page operations was with data sharing activities. In the beginning, we were really working with the Centers for Disease Control and other Department of Homeland Security partners about how we could share information that would support contact tracing. And now that we're a little bit out of the contact tracing mode, we're also using the Department of Health and Human Services data still for our own COVID-19 monitoring and facility management. So COVID has certainly accelerated our digital transformation efforts and also helped in accelerate some of our data sharing policy initiatives as well.
That's great. Thank you all for sharing that. So it sounds like, across different verticals, sort of entertainment and leisure and government even, there's been a massive impact and learnings derived from that. I was wondering if we could kind of focus in on the staffing or the people that were behind this, and if there was any shifts or any maybe it was leading up to this and it was going to happen anyway, but the impact of that transformation on the human side and who's doing this. So and also thinking through any of the shifting roles or blurring lines there.
I can speak for the leisure space. At the time, we had to put most of my team on furlough. Only the senior directors were able to kind of work. We all took a 20% pay cut for a long time, working on bonuses and all sorts of things. And so it was a very difficult time to maintain momentum on projects that we had begun before, which was still very important, maybe even more important, and to maintain morale amongst those who were remaining and also those who were on furlough. I know a lot of companies experienced a very similar situation during the course of 2020. And so it did have a profound effect on us, because it's sort of like we had to accelerate, but at the same time with fewer people. And it was just a very acute stress, which I'll probably never forget and hope I never have to repeat again in my career.
Yeah, we certainly faced similar challenges. We were just about to furlough about 70% of our staff as well. Luckily, we were able to avoid that with a lot of belt tightening. But our team has changed. Not dramatically, and I think that is a result of the diversity of our team. We have data scientists, data engineers, statisticians, analysts, policy specialists, former adjudicators, program managers, and communication specialists. And with the rise of data literacy among our hires in the past few years, plus the increase in data tools that really remove the technical barriers, we're seeing that these groups are really interchangeable. So we've seen people who've dealt with the law and policy really transition seamlessly into data science roles in IT shops too. For us, the big opportunity is that with democratized data and tools, our staff are able to create analytical solutions really quickly. They're not reliant on IT, they're not reliant on my team, they're able to do it themselves. So we're able to create much better products, much better insight, because there's really not much translation or interpretation to do. but we really do all struggle with those blurring lines. It's still a transition. We've had to work through those blurred lines and what's naturally a business side operation in the data world, and what still constitutes technology development. So, we're really starting to see some of those historical technology roles can be done completely on the business side. And it's an evolution, so it's going to take time, but we're working through it, and it's really only going to get clearer as time goes on and this evolution continues.
Yeah, we were fortunate. Comcast did a lot of furloughs of just consultant and third party support. Full time, we stayed pretty safe. They kept us pretty flat. They did reorg in like May of 2020. We did a massive reorg, which took that kind of had a little bit of unsettling. But the big effort was we had to move all the call center people home and basically get their technology up to speed so they could basically act as though they were in a call center, but at home on their computer. So that really put everyone's role kind of in a business operations focus. That took precedence over anything else. We certainly weren't looking at 3-year plans and whatnot. So where kind of roles got blurred was everybody had to put on their operations hat. And again, just think, how do we keep the lights on? And some teams that was okay. Some teams it was a bit of a struggle. Of course, when you're doing something like that and you're trying to move technology and improve your data infrastructure, it's kind of like what's the priority in those aspects. So things did definitely get blurred. There was a lot of confusion as to things changed more, probably multiple times a day as to what the priorities were. But really, I mean, the blurred line just became everybody had to become somewhat of a business operations focus, again, just to keep things moving. And, now we're recently trying to shift back to, okay, let's get back into our core functions and start having more of a planned strategy here.
Thanks. Yeah, those are interesting perspectives from the sort of everyone jumping in. It sounds like everyone was jumping in and kind of having to take on new roles, or and it sounds like data literacy and sort of those tools were helpful, kind of enablers on that side. What about in terms of the people, sort of some best practices maybe that have emerged, or maybe that you're in retrospect you're realizing might have been helpful to clarify that blurriness? Does anyone have any perspective on that?
I'd say there's really no magic bullet there. You just got to talk it through, articulate what's important to you, what you need other parts of your organization to be responsible for, agree to it and document it. There's a classic program management artifact, the RACI matrix, the responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. We built one for our data sharing policy, and that has been a very simple but very powerful tool to help provide and communicate what those clear lines of responsibilities are. It's a simple artifact, but it took a long time to agree to all those things. And that's really what it's all about, is putting in that hard work to get clarity.
RACI for data sharing. I'm stealing that idea. That's a really good one. Need one of those. For us, it was really about prioritization, learning how to get better at priorities, because with a much reduced staff, we can only do so much. And so I just got better at saying no, and saying later, and saying these two things come before this third thing. So, it sort of accelerated my own sort of prioritization skills, and just required a ton of communication with our internal stakeholders and in our internal clients, to set expectations realistically and to not overpromise. So that was probably the skill I had to work on the most in 2020, because it wasn't something we had to do as much of in prior years, because I thought we were well staffed. I thought we had a great strategy in place. We had all these things as of like March 12th, 2020. And then after that, it all changed.
Great. I was thinking
we definitely prioritized a lot too, Greg. This really forced the whole agency into kind of a governance renaissance to be much more strategic across the entire enterprise on what we were spending our money on.
That's a healthy thing. It stinks that it takes a global pandemic to force us to do those kinds of things. I know, but I guess there's some positives that came out of it as well.
Silver lining, yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and launch a poll, I think, now, and just ask our audience. I mean, we have several participants here. It should be launched on your screen now, but if you could take a second, everyone who's attending the call, what do you think is the best way to clarify team structures? We've got a couple of different options here. We give it maybe 10 more seconds. Okay. So can everyone see the poll results coming in live, or am I the only one?
I see them.
Okay.
Yep.
So independent, looks like the answers were establishing independent teams that work in parallel. Centers of excellences also came up as well. So interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I might have suggested an all of the above option, right? Because if you think about, you think about the way I think about a center of excellence that works the best for medium to large companies is that you would have your independent teams at the front lines within the function, that had either a dotted line, it could be a solid line, but possibly a dotted line into a center of excellence. The center of excellence is responsible for best practices. It's responsible for tying all of these disparate teams together. It's providing tools, making decisions on the appropriate tools for the organization. So when I think of center of excellence and sort of a federated combination model, that's, to me, what has worked best in the past. But every company is different.
Yep, that's great. Speaking of sort of those tools and making better decisions, one statistic that I recently read from Gartner was that by 2023, 33% of large organizations are going to have analysts practicing decision intelligence or decision science. So that's in 2 short years, Gartner's predicting that 1/3 of large orgs are going to be practicing decision intelligence, decision science. Wanted to get the panelists' take on that, and kind of tie that to what we've been going through in terms of COVID and digital transformation, and how decision making may or may not have changed, and what you're seeing there on your end.
I think for us, we're right in the middle of it, in that transition. We've had lots of folks that are able to build great visualizations, build great products that can help people make decisions. But now there's almost this flood of information. So how do we streamline that into only sharing the most important, really honing in on the important decisions that people need to make, so that we're not overwhelming them with lots of other extraneous information that it's important, but it really starts to cloud your decision-making space. So I would say that we're right in the middle of that shift and focusing on the value, not just creating.
I would agree with that. I'm a huge fan of using the term decision science. My master's degree was in decision science. I love that concept more than data science, right? Because there's something esoteric about data science, but decision science is action oriented, right? So that's a verb, making a decision, right? And so it's the responsibility really of the leaders to steer in that direction and be really good listeners for your internal clients and look for what they are trying to solve for and really help them to better articulate what decision they need to make before you begin to build out whatever model or even visualizations are necessary. So I kind of steer away from the concept of sort of business intelligence and that, and focus on saying analytics or even better decision science or insights. I think insights is a great term as well. But I always say that, our role in the organization is to use data to help others make better decisions. And so to me, I'm a really big fan, and I think I'm seeing the evolution there because, the clients understand, our internal clients understand, even if they're not data people, they understand that a report or a chart or a visualization is only going to get them so far. They always say the same thing. Well, what is it telling? So if you don't have a good answer for that, then you're really not doing your job. So kudos to all those who are focused on kind of the decision analytics aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely needs to be the focus. 33%, and actually executing that 33% may be a bit bullish. And I always said, I mean, data's ultimate outcome should be to make a decision. And you don't need you don't need a whole data lake sometimes to do that, and just a bunch of dashboards. And the inherent issue lies, in my experience, time and time again, is just that connection between the entire funnel of analytics and data and the all teams involved of what is the decision, what is the real business decision that the executives are trying to make, and how that's communicated down the funnel so that that's what's ultimately being worked towards. There's a lot of miscommunication along that where that's where things fail. And sometimes I think a lot of leadership is still stuck in the idea of, give me another dashboard, give me another report, go get the data. But it's like, what decision are you trying to make? Let us formulate. Let's work seamlessly and formulate that best recommendation. So I think it's more of a communication and what I call like interpersonal analytics. There's just a lot of non-conversation happening that really connects the dots from leadership down all the way down to IT and back up. So 33% would be great, but yeah, I mean, everything that it's ultimately companies that are going to succeed are going to be, fully embracing a decision science methodology, because it's real simple. That's what data is supposed to do for you, help you make decisions.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we all agree that it's where we should be going towards, and the data should be supporting those decisions. Mario, you kind of touched on a pretty key one, but my next question was around sort of the difficulties around kind of approaching your analytics in that way with the decision in mind. I mean, you mentioned that just clarity or communication around what decision is even being made or needs to be made on the business end and getting that back. Are there any other challenges that you guys have seen on that front? And on the flip side, any best practices? I mean, Mario, you mentioned sort of interpersonal analytics, right? And making sure that clarifying those, but any other, I guess, challenges or best practices on kind of leading your teams in that direction?
Yeah, I'll comment on both. The challenge is, and I think if we look back at like when computers first really started to boom and then the internet, everybody needs to be educated at least a little bit. The biggest problem I see is that a lot of leadership, especially in bigger companies, still don't have a real grasp on what analytics is. They still think of it in terms of just data. But like, oftentimes I'll get a request and it'd be like, oh, yeah, give me this, give me this analysis and then add in this view of another segment or demographic, whatever the case may be. And it's like, I'll be like, well, that date is, that date is in a silo with well, so-and-so has it. Oh, well, great. They have it. It's in an Excel sheet on their desktop, and it's not part of our infrastructure. And then to do that analysis, there's different interpretations. So, when like computers came out and like everybody had to educate themselves a little bit to understand like the functionality and how the thing actually works. They don't have to be experts, but I think the biggest challenge is that there's still just a lot of leaders in my company still, think of analytics and IT as almost synonymous, and of course we know they're not. So really, it's like an education thing. If you want to be a data-driven organization, everybody has to be a little bit educated of what data and that entire funnel means, so that when there's issues that arise or when you ask for something, you at least have some sort of perspective on what's involved in doing that. So then you can better formulate and better provide direction to your team. Best practices, again, is what I call interpersonal analytics. That's kind of where I've excelled in my career, being a bit technical, having worked with data, but also being more of a conversationalist and being able to speak with and kind of bring together the executives. Is how do you really drive that communication? What is that fundamental process, that kind of feedback between the analytics teams and everyone in between and leadership? It's not a technology issue. It's not a solutions issue. It's not another buzzword. It really comes down to just, there needs to be an analytics ecosystem. But to have that, everybody needs to be a little bit educated.
You're describing maybe just even a step beyond data literacy, is sort of understanding the process or the ops behind how the data, beyond just what the analytics side. That's great. Any other perspectives?
Yeah, I think, one of the challenges that we face is kind of disaggregating the tool itself from the purpose of the tool. I think a lot of non-analytics executives get caught up in the tool set, and some of that is because they're being regularly approached by salespeople and representatives of the tools, and so you're getting a very brand-oriented focus when in fact many of the tools and much of the business intelligence tools out there, and even the data science tools, are converging in a way that is commoditizing them. And so I would much rather our executives be focused on the purpose of the tool and what it can do, rather than the tool itself. And so I think I've done a pretty good job of helping steer people in that direction, so that we can make as leaders in analytics can make the appropriate decision for the organization in terms of the tool set, but make sure that they're focused on just the output itself.
Yeah, speaking to Mario's point about interpersonal skills for analytics, that is absolutely true. And in my organization, we have an analytical side of our organization and a data management side, which is kind of our bridge to our IT shop. And from that perspective as well, we really need technical folks that have people skills. We have to have an enterprise view of our agency's systems. We have a lot of them. There's not just one case management system. We have multiple, and they're built differently at different times with different standards. And trying to convince dozens of systems in our own agency and in sister agencies in the department, trying to convince them to implement standards, from a technical perspective, of course it makes sense. No one would argue with that. The interoperability is so key. But to actually get them to do it requires a lot of relationship building, a lot of understanding of what their technical challenges are, and helping them figure out what the solutions are to be able to do work that benefits everyone. So it does rely a lot on that good, strong balance of technical and interpersonal skills.
I like that. I think we have about 5 minutes left here. I want to make sure we got to a couple of our audience questions. The first one was just around what have we learned from COVID, and if similar things happen in the future, what can we do to be prepared? So I kind of see that as sort of a how do we rebuild stronger type of a question looking forward. And then the other question was skills gaps and preventing your orgs that are preventing your orgs from reaching their data analytics goals. Was hoping we could kind of do a quick lightning round here at the end, either kind of the future looking question or the skills gaps and how are you assisting in that?
I think on the future. Oh,
go ahead, Mario.
On the future looking, I think, one thing we need to take into account is resiliency. Pre-COVID, I was always in an environment where everything was a fire drill and we were scrambling, and it's like, well, wait a minute, we just made it through a pandemic. We pulled off some pretty big operational movements. We pivoted pretty quick on things that we thought would have taken years. We did in months, if not weeks. So I think forward looking, the strategy really needs to be around, okay, we can achieve things when we work in harmony, and there is a common goal. Hopefully it's not one where we're forced because it's a pandemic, but I think there just needs to be more of a people focus going forward and less of a process focus, because there was always a process focus, but I think people need to be given more credit and work, and certainly employees need to be trusted in their jobs. If we were able to survive this, I think businesses really big organizations really need to take more value in their people getting things done and being able to provide valuable feedback and help articulate a strategy, because we've proven that things can get done when everybody's on board. And there is resiliency, but going back to the days of just 50 meetings and 50 decks and 500 slides of the same thing over and over again, and just burning people out, I'm hoping to see that those days are kind of behind us.
Yeah, I think resiliency is a great word. Hopefully there's a whole generation of leaders who are forever impacted by COVID in a positive way, in that, we are aware of how important the human factor is in all of this, that we're aware of how quickly we can perform under pressure, and are aware, obviously, of the role and importance of data in driving decisions, as we mentioned before. And if you think about it, millions of people who had never really looked at a line chart in detail before were doing that over the course of 2020. They were checking on COVID trends in their area. They were visualizing on a map. All the things that we've done for years and are passionate about, the rest of the world kind of got to see and got a glimpse of. And it actually makes it easier to explain what I do, because I was able to use that as a reference. Hey, those maps? Hey, those COVID line trends? That's kind of what we do, but for our own business. And so, that kind of helps simplify the conversation a little bit, but I hope it raised awareness of the importance and value of data and good data. Oh, and by the way, we had an election at the same time, so more data was being consumed by people. And it also pointed to how important the integrity of data is, and how we need to be aware of what data we're consuming as citizens of the world.
Yeah, Greg, everyone got a lot smarter in terms of being able to read a graph. Everyone was using data to make everyday decisions. And we need to feed that common craving for data to keep this momentum going. People did it in their everyday lives. Let's keep it going in their professional lives too. So we really need to make it easy to track the same performance information for our own operations. And we really need to make it important. We need to make them care. We need to make it interesting and exciting. You know, who doesn't love a good return on investment? Just because I'm in the government, like I said, I'm part of a fee-funded agency. So every dollar that we invest, we expect to get, you know, 5 back. And, you know, you really want to, it's so satisfying to see a project that you're doing yielding a good return on investment. So being able to track that, you know, is something that we've seen a lot of people get excited about. And other, you know, for line staff, for incentives, if you get a bonus because you hit a certain quota or, you know, conquered a certain performance measure, if you're able to monitor that on a daily basis, of course, I'm going to check on it. So I can make sure I'm getting close to those bonuses. So we just really have to tap into what excites people, what's important to people every single day. Keep that momentum up.
I love it. Thank you, panelists, so much for this discussion. I mean, it's ranged from COVID and digital transformation to making better decisions and everything in between. So really appreciate your participation. And I believe, I don't want to steal any of April's thunder, but I believe there will be a Q&A, sort of a more intimate setting where we can, you know, continue this conversation, you know, with the panelists. Maybe
yeah,
April,
absolutely. We'll have the speaker meet and greet coming up in just a bit, and several of our speakers will be able to join again, and we can kind of answer some more of these questions and continue the conversation. So thank you all very much to Chris and our panel for joining. Our next session is coming up, and to join that, all you need to do is go back into the portal and click to join, and we will see you there shortly at the next keynote session.
Thanks, everyone.